Inspired by a true story, a farmer on the brink of bankruptcy gets inspired by a sultry cabaret performance, sparking an idea on how to save his livelihood. David walks up to his truck to leave his farm, but his grandfather, Leo, approaches, urging his grandson to follow his attorney's advice. However, his mother, Mireille, hurries to them and suggests he agree to the judge instead. When Leo argues against this, Mireille reminds them of how the farm killed her husband, so they must let it go. Regardless, Leo insists that David do what he can to keep the farm. With that, David meets the judge who wants to sell the land to cover the debt. The man haggles for an extension, but the judge only gives him 2 more months to settle his debt. Later at a pub, David shares his woes to his farmer friend, Fred. Instead of cheering him up, Fred thinks that the farming business is doomed. That evening, David drunkenly walks when he hears sounds from a cabaret. Curious, he heads in just before the host, Tonio, introduces Bonnie, who does aerial dances. This entrances David, giving him an idea. The next day, while getting her haircut, Mireille watches her son clear the barn, making her wonder why he asked for an extension. Her hairdresser, Letitia, believes he has an idea, but Mireille thinks the woman was right to divorce David. Later that day, David asks his farmhand, Huari, to do farm work while he does his project, promising to pay him later on. Huari then asks where he'll get the dancers. Mireille overhears this, wondering what he means. Upon learning her son's plans, she storms off yelling. The day after, David goes to the cabaret for Bonnie, only to witness Tonio quarreling with Wendy, another dancer who quits. After she leaves, David finds Tonio flirting with Bonnie, but the woman finds this disgusting. Tonio soon walks out, leaving David to speak to Bonnie as the woman packs up since the host didn't pay her. Unable to articulate what he needs from her, the man then invites her to his dairy farm for a job. Suspicious, Bonnie asserts that she's broke since men have betrayed her repeatedly, so she refuses to trust him. Despite this, Bonnie finds herself in David's truck, warning the man that she texted Wendy his plate number and will call the police if she doesn't answer her in an hour. David jokes that Wendy won't call soon since it's cocktail hour. Eventually, David presents the dancer his makeshift cabaret, with a stage made out of hay and spare party supplies. David wants to start the first village cabaret in France, which will sell food straight from the farms with no expensive middlemen. Bonnie heavily criticizes it. With no electricity, ventilation, and acoustics, it wouldn't attract customers. With that, she asks him to drive her back, though the hurt farmer just gives her directions to the nearest bus stop instead. Bonnie spitefully marches to the bus stop while Letitia and her customer watch her from a nearby house. The customer hints that the pretty woman came from David's farm, and the hairdresser acts like this doesn't bother her. Later, David shares what happened to Huari, lamenting that he was looked down upon like everyone else. Huari, however, assumes that David didn't try hard enough. This spurs the man to chase down the bus and stop it, much to Bonnie's surprise. The empowered farmer then steps inside and, with the passengers watching, declares to Bonnie that he won't let the government take their land, so his cabaret will be a loud statement against them. The passengers cheer and he urges Bonnie to help him, reasoning that she has the talent and character to make this possible. This inspires her, but she firmly states her terms that it's strictly stage performance. She handles the artistic aspects and she gets a room. A passenger even adds that she gets a share of the profits. David agrees to the terms and the passengers cheer. Soon, Mireille is surprised to see the two arrive and enter their home. Inside, David leads Bonnie into a half-finished room, explaining that his ex-wife started it but they split before it was done. He offers his room instead, but Bonnie accepts this unfinished room. That night, however, Bonnie goes to David's room, disturbed by the weird noises from the field mice. He offers his room since it's less noisy and grabs clean linen for her. He pauses before her as he leaves, and Bonnie quickly rejects his presumed advances. David, however, states that he's more interested in her talent than her body. She finds this ridiculous. In the morning, Bonnie has breakfast with David and his friends while the cabaret owner reads out his audition call for more staff. Mireille barges in and warns Bonnie that whatever her son is doing will be a struggle. Despite this, David sends his ad to the local press, though on the day of the audition, nobody arrives. David decides to drive out with Bonnie to find performers, revealing that he got their contact information from the employment office. Their first contact is a farmer who can emanate farm animal sounds. Bonnie finds it weird weird, but it makes David nostalgic. The second one is a woman named Dominique, but turns out to be a male hardware store clerk. Confused, David quickly lies that they just need help looking for toilet parts. The third performer is an old hypnotist named Gabor. The old eccentric offers to demonstrate his hypnotism on David, and as Gabor concentrates and gesticulates, he ends up falling asleep instead. The fourth are Line and Laura, two flapper women doing the Charleston. Their last contact is a young deaf magician named Gabriel. Though she has skill, Bonnie thinks working with her disability might be difficult. Still, they hire the performers except for the animal imitator. Bonnie gathers them in the barn to prepare them for the grueling rehearsal when a woman suddenly arrives and introduces themselves as Dominique. David is surprised by their transformation, while Bonnie continues her stern speech nonetheless. Mireille and Fred arrive to watch the rehearsals, but Bonnie asks them to leave since their practice has to be private. She then orders the performers to their sleeping quarters, and as they leave, Dominique eyes Fred. Sensing his friend's interest, David tries to warn him about Dominique, but Bonnie calls him, distracting him. The rehearsals and farming continue the next day, though the Charleston pair struggles to dance in rhythm, infuriating Bonnie. Sensing some rivalry between them, Bonnie urges them to motivate each other. Just then, Leo marches in and fires a warning shot, refusing to let his farm turn into a brothel. However, his ire soon fades and he walks away, leaving everyone stunned. In Mireille's house, Letitia watches Leo march out, followed by the rattled performers. Letitia then learns from the mother that Bonnie sleeps in David's room, sparking her curiosity. Soon, the troupe enters Mireille's house to unwind from Leo's outburst, and Letitia uses this chance to speak to Bonnie. She first offers her services as a hairdresser, then informs Bonnie that she's David's ex-wife. Undeterred, the performer wonders why that's relevant, so Letitia waves it off. Later, David visits Fred since he's not answering his calls, only to learn that the government just took his friend's land from him. In the attic of Mireille's home, the troupe relaxes when David crashes in, towing his despaired friend. He takes Fred to a bed since he has nowhere else to stay, earning mixed responses from the troupe. Gabor interrupts him with a vision that his grandfather is relieving himself at the barn. David briefly peeks at the window and sees exactly that, surprising him. Dominique then offers to comfort Fred, but despite David declining, his friend latches on to their embrace. The next day, Dominique sings a ballad, delivering a performance that moves everyone. However, Bonnie comments that their song is depressing, and the performer complains how they're being stereotyped as comedic before storming off. Bonnie then tells the troupe that a cabaret shouldn't be a funeral. In her frustration, she picks on everyone's rehearsal issues, prompting Gabrielle to ask why she's stressing them out. She defends that it's her job, but David compares it to stressed cows that don't produce milk. Still, Bonnie stands her ground and complains about his grandfather's constant interruptions, like driving the noisy tractor around the barn. Infuriated, Bonnie storms out to talk to Leo. Before David follows, Fred asks what Dominique is being stereotyped for, but his friend promises to discuss it later. David follows Bonnie to Leo's house where the woman tries to start the conversation. However, the old man firmly implies that Bonnie is a paid woman tarnishing the pride of this farm. David defends her by reasoning that he's saving the farm, but his grandfather calls him a dreamer, which isn't what working farmers do. This insults David, who stresses that since his father passed away, he'd been waking up early and doing the work alone. This leaves Leo speechless, prompting David to march off. Later that afternoon, while Bonnie is drilling Line and Lori's routine, Letitia tells David that she'll work for the cabaret. Surprised, David wonders why since the farm bores her. In response, Letitia reminds him that he promised her a more exciting life when they married. David blames his father's passing for him not fulfilling this, but she insists that it's because he only cares about the farm. He doesn't answer, so she points out that it's nice to see him having fun, something she didn't see when they were together. Just then, Bonnie scolds them for being noisy and orders Letitia to help with the wigs. A car horn interrupts them and Bonnie growls, knowing who it is. Outside, Tonio calls Bonnie and introduces himself to David and the troupe, offering himself as a manager. Bonnie rejects him since David will host. Tonio argues that he can add flavor to their bland group, but Bonnie ignores him and returns to continue rehearsals. Desperate, Tonio exclaims that Bonnie was a lowly pole dancer whom he loaned money to and cared for her. Bonnie snaps that she paid him back, but he demands gratitude. This fractures Bonnie's bravado, and as if defending her, Mireille arrives and threatens Tonio into leaving. With him away, the embarrassed dancer urges the others to continue rehearsal, not willing to let Tonio ruin her day. As the days pass, everyone does their job. The farmers do farm work and the troupe practice their performance. David also does the paperwork only to realize that he's low on cash. Since he'll be hosting, he rehearses before the troupe but ends up mumbling as he's not used to public speaking. Bonnie encourages David, instructing him to excite his guests and capture their attention. David attempts to hype the audience, but he just can't get himself excited enough. That night, David practices in front of a mirror. Bonnie smiles upon seeing his effort. She enters his room and asks if he's gonna make her wait any longer. David assumes this is about intimacy, so he decides it's time. Instead, Bonnie clarifies that it's about the costumes, so the man admits that he's low on funds. This upsets Bonnie, but she offers to sell her ring, reasoning that it came from Tonio anyway. David accepts it but promises to pay her back. The next day, David announces to the group that the locals agreed to sell their products during the cabaret and the costumes will arrive tomorrow. This has them cheering. However, Bonnie wonders when they'll see Gabor rehearse. In response, Gabor stands up to show them his talent. Lion volunteers to be hypnotized, but Gabor chooses Huari because he has a connection with him. Huari hesitantly leaves the table and Gabor performs hypnotism, which makes him fall asleep. He then commands Huari to reveal a deep secret. The hypnotized farmhand confesses that he has deep feelings for Mireille, but kept it to himself since her husband died. He also wants to worship her, in life and in bed. Gabor then wakes him up and Huari doesn't remember anything. He asks what he said, but David assures him that he only mumbled while Mireille sips her wine uncomfortably. The rehearsals continue and it's Bonnie's turn to show her dance. The intensity and carnality of her performance stuns everyone, and when she asks Dave for feedback, the man stammers. However, Letitia exclaims that while the performance was powerful, she wasn't smiling. With that, she suggests Bonnie dance something she likes rather than something good that she hates. Bonnie argues that she doesn't need to change it since it works, and criticizes Letitia's opinion since she's not a performer. She then diverts her rage at everyone else's performance, asserting that nobody will pay a premium for it. David tries to mitigate the situation by complimenting her dance, but Letitia thinks he's blinded by love. Pissed, Mireille leaves, prompting everyone else to follow, boycotting the rehearsals. After some time, David assures the troupe that he spoke with Bonnie so the rehearsals can continue. The troupe, however, maintains the boycott. A man then walks in and David introduces him as Remy, who will handle their website, so they'll need photos to start it. He encourages everyone to put on their costumes and smile, but they regard him woodenly. With that, David looks for Bonnie and finds her in the stall barn with the cows. She warns him not to encourage her, so instead, he checks on a pregnant cow, saying that he's hopeful about the calf's health. This captures Bonnie's interest, so she caresses the cow with him. The gentle moment makes her realize how harsh she's been to the others, so she asks for help, apologizing to the troupe. David takes Bonnie outside where the troupe is posing with their costumes. He apologizes on her behalf, saying she agrees to be less strict. He adds that Bonnie is just passionate about her job, but she now understands that they do too. Everyone accepts the apology, but Huari interrupts them since the cow is giving birth. The two help the cow give birth while the troupe watches. Here, Bonnie sees how committed and caring David is. The next day, David drives a tractor through town while Bonnie and Letitia announce the opening of the cabaret next week. After the promotion, the two ladies rest somewhere. Bonnie suddenly gets a video call from Wendy, who announces that she got a job on Broadway and invites Bonnie to join her troupe. This gives Bonnie pause because performing on Broadway is her dream. However, David calls them, prompting her to end the call. As the opening of the cabaret draws near, everyone prepares for a celebratory dinner. While preparing dinner, Mireille urges Dominique to try out disco music. She even dances to it, adding that she loved this because of its honest message, encouraging Dominique to accept themselves. Huari dances with her as she proclaims that she'll love whoever she wants, hinting at him as she sashays away. The dinner starts and David makes a speech, saying he was afraid they wouldn't make it and now he's afraid they will. He thanks them all, especially Bonnie. She then stands up and thanks him in return, calling him the linchpin to this operation. Letitia also shares how David never gave up on his dreams, but he comments that he gave up on her. Bonnie then concludes by thanking everyone for believing in her. Everyone starts to eat eat, and as Marie serves salad, she admits that she's proud of her son's work. She then prepares food for Leo and Huari offers to take it to him. Recalling Huari's confession, she asks what he wants from her, but the man excuses that he just wants wine. That night, David bumps into Bonnie on his way to his room, and the two awkwardly try to pass each other. The man takes her shoulders tenderly to divert her from his path, but just in time, Letitia barges in, telling them that the barn is on fire. David quickly rushes to the barn and Fred exclaims that Leo is inside. David enters the barn to find it engulfed in flames, with Leo not wanting to leave. David stubbornly charges into the fire to take him out, forcing his grandfather to hobble out while everyone helplessly watches the barn burn down. In the morning, the firefighters clear the fire and inform David that it was arson due to the gasoline can they found inside. The fireman asks who could have done this, but David feigns that he doesn't know, unable to report his grandfather's desperate actions. The farmhands later help clear the rubble out and the troupe walk out, devastated, especially David. Later that day, David ponders on using a noose. Letitia interrupts him to ask if he has any parting words to the troupe and the love of his life, Bonnie. Only then does he realize that his ex-wife was jealous of Bonnie. She admits that she misses him and wants to finish the room they started. Finally, she tells him that Bonnie gave up Broadway to be here, and this empowers him not to give up as well. With that, they call out to the leaving troupe, announcing that the show must go on even if they have to use hay bales and pallets for furniture. This motivates everyone, so they help out in rebuilding their cabaret. The next day, people attend the makeshift cabaret they set up outside, making it already a booming success before the show even starts. In the evening, David heads to the stage but hesitates, so Marie starts to clap and everyone follows to encourage him. The host stumbles through his words but pulls through. Even though everyone calls him a dreamer, he says this is his best dream so far. He then clunkily introduces Bonnie, saying they're honored that she directed the show before going to Broadway. The announcement shocks everyone, including Bonnie. David then takes her hand and says she made his dreams come true, so it's his turn to urge her to pursue hers after the show. Unlike her previously intense performance, Bonnie's new dance is now lively and energetic, something she and the audience actually enjoys. David heads backstage to look for Gabor and finds the old man in the quarters, unable to handle the show due to his aging body. The hypnotist then urges him to go back and see his show, since the great Gabor already sees everything. The twin sisters perform next, and David finds everyone focused on their juggling skills. Up next is Gabriel's silent magic show with Remy as the assistant. During their act, David spots Leo apprehensively watching the show, yet as their performance ends, Leo claps, finally accepting his farm's future. For their final performance, Dominique sings Marie's favorite song, which makes the whole crowd dance along, marking the success of a farmer saving his farm along with the rest of his troupe's dreams.
Subscribe to watch more videos like this, turn on notifications and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.